Let's bring in Bernstein senior analyst Stacy Rasgon. Stacy, when it comes to really, I guess, the marquee names, the sort of acknowledged leaders in the AI story, NVIDIA, Broadcom, it feels as if not much has changed over the last several months, except for investors' perception of how much risk there is to that story.
That's exactly it. You go back 5 or 6 months beginning of the year, especially around, the DeepSeek moment. People thought the AI trade was over, right? They thought DeepSeek was going to result in lower spending needs. They thought the CapEx peak was shortly arriving, and all these stocks got completely whacked. And I mean, the only thing we've seen since DeepSeek is purchase intentions and CapEx intentions go up. We've seen a lot of the sovereign demand now coming from the Middle East and other places, and we've seen NVIDIA's own supply issues around Blackwell start to really ease up, and those parts are really starting to ship. And so I think investors now are a lot less worried about a CapEx peak this year. They don't even really seem to be as worried about it next year. 26 looks good. Again, the floodgates have opened on Blackwell supply, and so NVIDIA's looking good there. And even a company like Broadcom, they reported earnings a couple of weeks ago. They took up their expectations for their AI trajectory, especially into next year, materially, which again I think fuels that belief that the current spending trajectory that we're on has some legs, and it's clearly meant that the AI trade is back on in spades, and by proxy it's sort of dragged a lot of the other chip names along with it as well.
So are we genuinely free of the concerns that the export restrictions are going to be material, that they're really going to bite, that they could be tightened up again because the demand from elsewhere is just too strong?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I feel like people have sort of been acting like the export restrictions and the tariffs in particular are not going to happen. At least on the export restrictions, like to China for AI, those are done. I mean, like NVIDIA now and even AMD, I mean, they can't ship any of these parts into China right now. So that's been zeroed out. And for those guys, to the extent that they can work around some of those new restrictions, China may actually represent upside rather than downside around the controls because it's been zeroed. Around the tariffs, I think we'll see. I guess it's July 9th is when the reciprocal tariffs are supposed to end. We'll see if they actually do or not. We've got the 232 tariffs on the sector-specific tariff investigations that are ongoing. We're expecting something there. We'll see if we get semiconductor tariffs. I feel like the whole tariff story has probably not gone away. It has been sort of tabled for now. We'll see what that looks like into the second half. But I also think that again, the general demand for these parts is strong. There's a real sort of strategic reason, strategic rationales to build up capability here. And frankly, if semiconductor costs are going up, I mean, it's happened already. Semiconductor ASPs are 50% higher today than they were pre-COVID. It hasn't really impacted demand all that much. People have still bought. So.
And what about just other areas? I mean, we talked about the Micron, the move into earnings and the reaction to earnings and away from the core AI names. It's been a little bit of a spottier story in terms of when that cycle might really start to kick back in.
Yeah, so in some of the other, let's take the analog space, for example, industrial and auto. And most of the analog companies have actually been talking about a cyclical bottom, especially in industrial. And it's kind of hard to say. It's not implausible. We've had 8 or 10 quarters of year-over-year revenue declines in industrial. So the idea that we could be reaching a cyclical bottom and have a recovery, especially as channel inventories, at least the companies are claiming that they're lean now, that's not implausible. At the same time, you do have to wonder, given all of the tariff noises, some of that increased demand pull forward in front of those tariffs. We've absolutely seen pull forward in areas like auto. We've had some companies like ADI have called that out. I suspect in consumer electronic areas like PCs, we've also seen pull forward. Demand has been not fantastic, but reasonably or relatively strong. And I think the CPUs have been overshipping. And to me, that's clear evidence of pull forward. So I think it's a little mixed.
Yeah.
On the analogs, investors, by and large, have kind of wanted to believe, and it's not that hard to think that near-term, estimates for the analogs on that sort of rebound could go up. With the question of sustainability is still out there, though.